saw my job as one where I would speak about this culture on behalf of the black people who made it. And to do so not inoffensively or with timidity, but to do so with very high aggression, and to do so with precision, and to be willing to do it to the death.
Harry Allen's a veteran journalist, writer, and broadcaster whose work has had a huge impact on me. He's written about race, politics, music, and culture, and he witnessed firsthand the birth and evolution of Public Enemy, one of the greatest rap groups in history. I asked Harry to pick one of his favorite spots in New York for us to meet up, so he's showing me around the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens.
So welcome. This exhibition opened in July of last year, and it is the result of a donation of over 500 objects from the family of Jim Henson, including many, many puppets and some production design materials and costumes. It's a permanent exhibition devoted to all the work he did with his team of writers and puppet makers and performers to create some of the best-known characters, really, in American popular culture.
And shows, like Sesame Street.
And shows, yes, he had a hand in Sesame Street, The Muppet Show.
Even Star Wars.
Even Star Wars, yes. Frank Oz is an important part of the story. And also the fantasy worlds he created, the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. They're all covered here. Sesame Street is actually still shot next door at the studio, the Story Studio. And the Jim Henson Creature Shop, where they build a lot of puppets, is also just down the street in Queens.
This is one of my favorite places in the Museum of the Moving Image, the Sumner and Redstone Theater. This is a theater that was put together as part of the renovation that was done here in 2011. And this is a screening room where people can see all kinds of these usually restored films, often the museum will have here. The first time I ever saw Night of the Hunter was here. That was a really incredible experience to watch it in black and white and big on the screen in a house full of people. And the museum has such a wide repertoire of films, of things that they show. It's just really a special thing, a special part of New York. Hip-hop activist and media assassin, it's a title I took, really to describe the way I wanted to do my work covering hip-hop culture. I met the people who would ultimately become PE when I was in college. I met Chuck D at Adelphi University, which was the school I was attending when I left high school. And we all conglomerated at the radio station, WBAU. At the time, conventional wisdom was that hip-hop was a fad.
It was going to die out.
It was going to die out. Everybody just knew it. It was just a fad. It was going to go away. And these were the first people I'd ever met who not only didn't think that, but who it just never came up as a subject. And so our interactions were from that point forward. You know, we were about building, recognizing the culture, and we always thought of it as a culture. So I think that was what made it most intense, hanging out with these guys at that very early time.
You know, people always remember Public Enemy's political legacy, but they really engineered from scratch a lot of production techniques and, you know, ways of sampling and sounds that just had not existed before, not even in popular music, in music.
I think Public Enemy's approach to production, and which was, you know, ultimately fulfilled by the Bomb Squad, their production arm made up of Hank Shockley, Keith Shockley, Carl Ryder, which was Chuck's another alias for Chuck D, and Eric Vietnam Sadler. I think that their approach to production was analogous to Chuck's approach to lyricism and to subject matter. Chuck has one of the most distinct and recognizable voices in hip-hop. It's a voice that's so dominant that people who meet him for the first time are usually surprised that he's a person of average height as opposed to someone really big or really tall. And so they wanted his voice to have to sit in the mix and to work in that mix. And they knew that they had to come up with a sound that was not only different, but that did that as well.
The minute they see me, fear me. I'm the epitome of Public Enemy. Used, abused without clues. I refuse to blow a fuse. They even had it on the news. Don't believe
One of the other things about Public Enemy is that even though their legacy is of this staunch, politically uncompromising group, humor and pop culture references were a huge part of what they did, not just in the music, but in the way they presented themselves, in the videos, even in the album covers. There's a lot of very satirical, tongue-in-cheek kind of references all throughout their work. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
I think a lot of has been made of the incredible amount of popular culture that PE references, either through sampling, through visual culture, through Flavor Flav, or through, Public Enemy introducing themselves as Black Panthers of rap, which is a reference, of course, not to the comic strip or to the recent film, but to the original Oakland-based political activist, the Black Panthers. This is just the way Chuck's and Hank's and Flavors and everyone's minds work. Their minds were kind of attenuated to all kinds of culture and seeing it all as useful and relevant. These are guys who grew up on the music of Parliament Funkadelic, and if you ever looked at one of their album covers, they were super dense and super referential. Chuck was also a design student, so he was used to thinking in terms of schools of thought and references and styles and pulling from them in order to create something new. What these guys did was really make music the way that they wanted, being completely true to themselves. When you hear those albums, you're not hearing compromise. You're not hearing someone trying to make music for the radio. There wasn't any radio. You're hearing people being utterly true to themselves, to their politics, to their vision of the world, to the way they want the world to sound. I think that's why those albums are so captivating, because they're very direct, very real, no filler, no fakeness, just raw energy and raw ideas.
Public Enemy's logo is a black man
In a target.
in a rifle scope.
Yeah.
And so much of the project of Public Enemy and your own work is about flipping that narrative.
Certainly, first of all, pointing out to the futurism, even, of that image, that in the 30 years since PE started making records, that image has not become outdated. It's become, it seems, even more pressing, as we hear, seemingly from everywhere, instances of violence, and particularly police violence and brutality against unarmed black people, especially black males, but not only. And then also to not only, as you suggest, be defensive or to sit defensively, but to also be offensive. Be offensive, first of all, with our ideas and with our words, and to make sure that as we protest and counteract these ideas, this dominant narrative, that we do so not solely from emotion, but mostly mentally, with a very strong mental approach. We didn't want to be mealy-mouthed or soft about how we spoke about our condition. We wanted our words to be flinty and pointed.
I'm going to my media assassin, Harry Allen. I gotta ask him. Yo, Harry, you're a writer. Are we that tight? Don't believe the hype.
For me, so much of hip hop is influenced by the idea of superheroes. The alter ego, having a moniker, having a persona that is beyond what your civilian life might have been.
Yes.
And I was going to ask the same thing about, media assassin. What did you imagine that term to be, and what did you want it to project in people's minds?
I think you're absolutely right, Babir, when you talk about the influence of comics and comic book culture on hip-hop. What we have to do is think back to, the first hip-hop crews, which had names like the Treacherous Three. The Devastating Three MCs. These were larger than life kind of monikers, designed to, I guess you might say, cast fear, apprehension in opponents. I think that culture has had a huge influence on hip hop culture. I know it certainly is something to which Chuck relates. I know he's a big Jack Kirby fan, for example. And I when I took the title Media Assassin, it was with this idea that, first of all, to get anywhere in hip hop, you have to have a really cool name. And so that was a cool name. But what I really wanted to do with the term was talk about the way I wanted to approach writing. I saw my job as one where I would speak about this culture on behalf of the black people who made it. And to do so not inoffensively or with timidity, but to do so with very high aggression, and to do so with precision, and to be willing to do it to the death. All these were ideas I was pulling from the idea of an assassin, a person who kills for political reasons. It's never personal. He's precise. He's lethal. He knows how to get into a jam and get out of a jam. And I wanted, these were all ideas that I wanted to transfer to how I saw the task of writing about hip-hop culture, and about hip-hop culture as that culture was being made by a besieged people. And so I felt that term, that title, served that process very well.
To me, it comes back to there's a skit, I think, on Nation of Millions or Fear of Black Planet, which is, you know, everyone calling into the radio station and complaining about Public Enemy.
Yeah, 66.6, that's Fear of Black Planet.
Right.
Hello?
Yes, hello. Yes, Alan, I think that white liberals like yourself have difficulty understanding that Chuck's views represent the frustrations of the majority of black youth out there today.
I do understand that.
To me, that's great art, which it takes an existing frustration and sharpens it into something that makes people understand it or helps people to say it.
And explodes into something like lovely in a way. Like, it's gotta be, that's what great art is, I think.
What better place to contemplate the nature of art than
The Here at Momi?
a cutting edge museum?
I'm thinking about reverse racism again. The whole thing is so well timed, so well delivered. It's like this guy has just said everything I've tried to say, but he made it hilarious.
That is how I felt reading The Incredible Whiteness of MC.
In 2003, just after Eminem's movie 8 Mile came out, Harry published an essay in The Source called The Unbearable Whiteness of MC. It was a really formative piece of writing for me. It's a brilliant piece on cultural appropriation and whiteness in hip-hop, and it was published long before those types of conversations were as mainstream as they are today.
We both produced a piece of art or content or creativity that had similar reactions.
Absolutely,
Provoked
because-
similar reactions from each of us,
Because-
which is such a weird thing.
For me, that essay just distilled all of these things that I felt and thought but could not articulate.
That's so wild.
About-
I don't know that I have any other person that I had this relationship with.
When I read it, I was like, this is everything that I've been trying to explain, but like laid out methodically
Right.
as an argument rather than an emotion, because all I had was an emotion.
Right.
Like why is it different when white people succeed
Right.
in hip hop? And not only, you know, people, when you say that, people get obsessed with, oh, you're hating on this individual.
Right.
But I was like, no, it's so much more complicated than that, which is what you talk about, which is that.
Which is why I never said in the piece whether he was a good MC or not.
Right, because it's
I
also
completely avoided that.
It's also about how a white audience consumes someone who is appearing to dominate in the taboo field of, you know, some kind of black art form.
Right.
And
Yes.
and you know, and which came from, you know, at the time, so many people would be like, I don't listen to rap except Eminem. And I was like, what does that tell you about yourself? I mean,
Great.
so your piece really was like, for me, like just mind blowing.
I think of Greg Tate's book, Everything But the Burden, in which the subtitle of which I think was What White People Want from Black Culture. I think of Leroy Jones, better known as, or later known as Amiri Baraka, stuff that he wrote about jazz in The White Critic, which was very influential on me. So I certainly don't take any credit for innovating or doing any, but I will say that I came into hip hop to talk racially, and it's never something that's never left. And I think that there probably is a lot more writing now from people about appropriation and race and things of that nature, and I'm sure a lot of it's very good. And I probably don't read as much of it as I could or should maybe. I think, the more the merrier, as long as it's having the desired effect. I don't know why people write about these issues. I know why I did. And I did because I thought Eminem was having tremendous success and it was not being regarded critically in any way. And I didn't think anyone was writing about or saying anything about what his success meant racially. Really, I just had a desire to address that fact, that reality. And I think our situation now is maybe a bit more dire because there's a lot more things happening.
Like, I truly believe you have to make like 100 videos before you can make a video that's like good like yourself.